In a world obsessed with speed, complexity, and instant results, the greatest investor of all time discovered his superpower in silence. Now that sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? But trust me, it's the key that unlocks not just one of the most legendary careers ever, but a completely different way of thinking about success itself.
I want you to go back with me for a second. The year is 1995. The internet is just exploding into our lives. You've got that dial-up modem sound. That's the anthem of this new era, right? Netscape just went public, and Wall Street is in a total frenzy. It's a gold rush. You have day traders, they're armed with brand new tech, and they're chasing tiny profits in the blink of an eye. The whole world is screaming, faster, faster, faster. And right in the middle of all that chaos, in a quiet office in Omaha, Nebraska, the master of the game was sitting perfectly still.
Then that's what we're going to dive into today. We're going to dissect the Warren Buffett routine and really get to the bottom of how patience, something most people see as just waiting around, was actually forged into his single most powerful strategic weapon. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the Oracle's paradox. Then we'll see how he built his intellectual moat. After that, we'll define his core philosophy, patience as a superpower. Then we get practical and break down his inaction playbook. We'll look at his journey from investor to icon, and finally, we'll bring it all home to you and talk about your compound interest of patience. All right, let's go back to that office in 1995. A reporter comes to visit Warren Buffett, and they're probably expecting, the command center of a financial empire. They must have pictured a wall of flashing screens, phones ringing off the hook, a guy plugged into the heartbeat of the market. But what they found was a quiet room. No computer, no stock ticker, and there's Buffett, totally lost in a book. And it's not even the Wall Street Journal, it's a history book. So they ask him, how are you handling this .com mania? And his answer changed everything. He just said, I just read and think. The paradox is just stunning. The world is screaming for more action, faster decisions, and the most successful investor on the planet was deliberately doing the opposite. His secret weapon wasn't what he was doing, it was everything he was choosing not to do. And this brings us to the central question, the one that really gets to the heart of his genius. In a game that's all about speed and being aggressive, how did doing almost nothing become the ultimate competitive edge? How did choosing to do less, to think more, and to just wait, sometimes for years, become the formula for one of the greatest fortunes in human history? Well, the answer isn't some secret stock tip, it's a discipline. And it's a discipline that was built decades before. You see, this discipline, this almost radical commitment to stillness, it wasn't just some tactic he picked up later in life. It was a framework he forged when he was young, the result of this intense struggle to find a rational, repeatable system that could work in the total emotional chaos of the financial markets. He was born during the Great Depression, and he was always obsessed with numbers and business. And get this, at age 13, he was already filing his own tax returns. Now that's not just some cute story, it tells you everything. It shows this deep, burning desire to understand the rules of the system, not just play the game. But he knew something was missing. He needed a core philosophy, and he found it after college when he basically fought his way into Columbia University just so he could study under the father of value investing, a guy named Benjamin Graham.
And Graham gave Buffett the single most important idea of his entire life, the intellectual moat. Now this isn't about being the smartest person in the room. Think of it more like an emotional and analytical fortress that you build around your mind. Graham had this great analogy. He said, the market is like a business partner named Mr. Market, who has these wild mood swings. Some days he's euphoric, and he's offering to buy your stocks for crazy high prices. The next day he's terrified, and he's trying to sell you everything for ridiculously low prices. The intellectual moat, that's the shield of reason that lets you just ignore Mr. Market's moods and focus only on the real underlying value of the business. This was the birth of his discipline. And from that one idea, his entire worldview would grow.
So this leads us right to the heart of his operating system, the philosophical shift that really explains everything he does. He took Graham's analytical framework and turned it into a personal superpower, patience. And I want to be clear, this is not a passive waiting game. This is an active, strategic resistance to that deep, primal urge we all have to constantly do something. It required him to completely change his identity. This slide lays it out perfectly. You've got two mindsets here. The trader lives and dies by price. They're glued to the screen, watching the numbers flicker, trying to guess what's next. Their weapon is speed, their goal is frequency. More trades, more action, more noise. Buffett shows a different path. He chose the path of the owner. The owner is obsessed with only one thing, the long-term value of the business itself. Their weapon is patience. Their goal is extreme selectivity. An owner doesn't care if the market has a bad week, just like a farmer wouldn't sell their entire farm because of a bad weather forecast. And that simple difference, it changes everything. So how does this owner's mindset actually play out? Well, for one, it completely flips your view of market chaos. When prices crash, the trader panics. The owner, they see a sale. Think about it. In 1988, after the huge market crash of '87, Buffett invested over $1 billion in Coca-Cola. Everyone else was scared, but he just saw a world-class company with an incredible brand temporarily on discount. Now that takes massive emotional stability, which comes from that intellectual moat we talked about. And it all stems from one simple rule: treat every stock purchase as if you were buying the entire company. That forces you to do the kind of deep, intense research you do before buying a house, not a lottery ticket.
This entire philosophy is summed up in his most famous quote, "My favorite holding period is forever." Now that's not just a charming, folksy line. It is a cold, hard, analytical conclusion. It means that if you've done the work and you've bought a wonderful business at a fair price, the most rational and profitable thing you can do is absolutely nothing. You just hold. The burden of proof is on the decision to sell, not the decision to keep holding. And this belief was so powerful, he literally engineered his entire life around it.
Which brings us to the inaction playbook. Because a philosophy is pretty useless if you don't have a system to actually enforce it. Buffett's real genius is in the simple, repeatable habits he created to protect himself from his own worst instincts and from the madness of the crowd. This chart right here, this is the cornerstone of his entire routine. He famously says that he spends about 80% of his day just reading and thinking. That is his job. And he's not just reading financial reports. He's reading history, biographies, industry magazines, anything that helps him build what his partner Charlie Munger calls a latticework of mental models. He's collecting information not to make a decision today, but to build this deep, almost intuitive understanding of how the world actually works. So when that rare opportunity finally shows up, the decision is practically obvious. It's rooted in decades of wisdom he's already stored up. And he pairs that reading habit with a really powerful mental constraint, symbolized by this number, 20. This is his 20-slot rule. He wants you to imagine that you get a punch card when you're born, and it only has 20 slots on it, and that's the total number of investments you can make in your entire life. How would that change what you do? You wouldn't waste a single punch on some half-baked idea, right? You would wait and read and think, and wait some more for a true no-brainer. It's a brilliant psychological trick that forces extreme selectivity and fights the single biggest enemy of great returns, just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. So Buffett's whole system is built on this totally counterintuitive idea. For a mind that's prepared, profound inaction is actually the most powerful form of action. The waiting isn't passive. It's like strategically storing up potential energy. It's based on thousands of hours of prep, ready to be unleashed with massive force when the perfect moment finally arrives. And it was this routine, practiced day after day, decade after decade, that completely transformed him.
The long-term result of this patient, methodical routine was a fundamental shift, not just in his bank account, but in what the word investor could even mean to the world. A legacy was being built, one quiet, rational decision at a time.
I mean, his legacy is just staggering. He took the term investor and elevated it from a speculator to a symbol of integrity and long-term partnership. The trust he earned was so immense, it gave him the title Oracle of Omaha. He proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that you could build world-changing success on simple ethical principles, which he explained with total clarity in his annual letters to shareholders, letters that basically became masterclasses in business. And in the end, the patient accumulation of all that wealth led to one of the biggest philanthropic pledges in human history, turning a fortune built on patience into an engine for global health and progress.
But look, this story isn't just a history lesson about a famous billionaire. His routine is built on principles that are universal. It's a mindset that you can apply to any career, any craft, any life. It's about learning how to tap into your own compound interests of patience.
And you can start by adopting the core of his routine. It boils down to 3 steps. First, read more, act less. Literally schedule time in your week for deep learning and thinking, not just for doing, and protect that time fiercely. Second, build your own intellectual moat. Whatever your field is, commit to understanding the fundamental principles so deeply that you become immune to the latest fads and frenzies. Become the person who really knows the why behind the what. And third, learn to wait for total conviction. Develop the courage to say no to a lot of good opportunities so that you have the time, energy, and resources to go all in on the truly great ones.
Ultimately, this is about a radical shift in what you're aiming for.
In a culture that worships speed, you have to realize that speed is not the goal. The goal is inevitability. It's about building the knowledge, the systems, and the temperament so that your desired outcome becomes, over time, the most logical and likely conclusion. You're not gambling anymore. You're building a machine designed for success.
When you get right down to it, Warren Buffett has always been a meticulous student of business. His quiet routine, of stillness, of reading, of thinking, that was the system that allowed patience to become his superpower. It built an incredible legacy of durable, ethical wealth, all of it rooted in a profound commitment to knowledge. And the question his story leaves us with is this: how are you going to invest your time? Because in the end, your ultimate success isn't going to be measured by the frantic pace of your activity, but in the quiet, unstoppable power of the compound interest of patience.